Our next speaker is Mr. Russell Wood. He's the Global Director of Solution Sales, Infographics. He will discuss the new wave of fire and rescue business transformation and collaboration through deployment of integrated systems, processes, and partnerships. That's a mouthful. Russell has worked closely with fire and rescue service clients for over a decade and has an in-depth understanding of all processes of resourcing, integration, data collection, reporting challenges faced by this sector. As the Global Director of Solution Sales, Russell is involved in formulating product sales and developmental strategy. He has worked closely with leading fire and rescue services and other organizations around the world in the areas of human resource management, availability, training and personal development, asset and fleet management, health and safety, occupational health, and business process management and automation. Russell, do you sleep? Without further ado, I'd like to welcome our next speaker of the day, Mr. Russell Wood. Welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I understand I'm probably the last thing between you and lunch as well, so hopefully I'll try and come in on time, and the next 15, 20 minutes, really just try and give you a bit of an overview. In terms of who I am, I think I probably had a long enough introduction already, so I'll keep that brief. But as mentioned, I work for Infographics UK Limited, and I've worked within the fire and rescue service with our clients for over 15 years. What I plan to do in the next 15, 20 minutes is, I think already this morning, certainly a couple of the other speakers have talked about the background that's happening in the UK, the big transformations that are taking place, and actually in this morning's example by Peter Holland, when we were talking about one of the examples in terms of the fire accident at Southampton, I'm going to talk a bit more about the background of actually what that fire service has done and the systems that they've put in place following on from that. So it works quite nicely. And then obviously finish for lunch and questions. So the background, which has already been covered to some degree in the last session as well by Steve from Manchester Fire, is the UK is having a big drive towards efficiency savings currently, but also in terms of safety and the competency information of their fire service staff. What happened a few years back is they went about doing a UK-wide or England-wide regional control projects. So from a mobilisation point of view, trying to bring together multiple services to work jointly. That ended up not going ahead, but what it did do is it made people to start to understand how can they get access to that information, how can they share that information in terms of the resources they have, the skills, the assets they have, and how they can work with other services, both other fire services, but also other agencies to work more effectively. So now these things are pushing forward, and over the last year or two we've seen big changes occurring. I do also realise that quite a lot of the audience isn't from a fire service background, so try and bear in mind as I talk about, and hopefully bring to life with some pictures of and images of the systems that people have put in place, the computer systems they've put in place. It starts to bring to life some of the things that have been talked about, but also bear in mind for the other industries, these things can equally apply to any kind of high-risk, skills-based working environments. So the changes that have taken place, as I mentioned, are driving a need for this accurate information in terms of who we have, what skills we have, what assets we have. And technology is becoming much more fundamental to business and senior management, because they realise it's all very well talking about processes, talking about safety standards, talking about the changes they want to put in place. But actually, if you're not recording that, if you're not managing that in some form of computerised systems, how do you know people are really following the processes that you've put in place? How do you understand what's going on and to manage that more effectively? So big changes happening, and much more strategic, the ICT or the technology managers, and working with the operational managers to bring these things into effect. So big changes that have taken place is things like the HR departments, the training departments, all the various back office areas within the fire services or in other industries have tended to go out and buy systems independently. So they go out and buy something to manage all the records of skills people have. They then go out and buy something to manage the rostering, the availability. They have somewhere else where they have people's contracts and role information in their HR systems, their sickness, their holidays. But that brings with it a lots of duplicate data entry. So when someone changes job, that's going to impact what they're doing, what skills they may need, what availability they have. When someone books on holiday or they book sick, you need to know that from a pay perspective, from an availability perspective, but also from the overall crewing and operational requirements. And wherever you have people entering data more than once, then basically you have lots of wrong and inaccurate data, as well as the inefficiency that comes with that. A graphic which hopefully brings some of this together is that rather than all these things being independent, we still have people within these different areas within the organization completing their little bits of the information, doing their job in terms of maintaining that HR information. But when I give someone a new contract or change things, the skills requirement will change automatically for the people in the training center, so we don't have to tell someone that that's happened. They just start to show up as someone who needs to be trained in these particular skills. When someone's given a qualification, or in fact they're deemed not to be competent anymore in a particular skill, again, when training, when assessors do these things, this flows through to an availability. If an asset or an appliance is defected or is being serviced, then it's all very well that I have all the people I need, all the skills I need, but if I don't actually have one of those nice big shiny red trucks to take out, then really we're not going to be able to do much. So we're trying to bring all these things together, all the little bits of information, so that people enter their piece of information once, but we have this integrated overall view of what's going on in our organization, where our assets are at. Next slide, please. I don't know if that's too clear, probably, for people certainly up the back. The Chief of Manchester was talking about the mobilisation and control projects they're doing. So what we're doing is we're dealing with all the things outside of that in terms of these back office functions. And what we're doing is passing that same data out to the mobilisation systems. So we understand to the minute, to the second, the changes that take place in all these areas, and we pass that to the mobilisation system. So again, no one's rekeying that information. They have a real-time view of all the assets and the availability of those assets. And then at the top end, what we're doing is we're bringing back that data. So we understand what incidents are happening, what types of incidents people have been on, and we can predict the type of information and the type of skills they may have used. And say a couple of the other screenshots that I'll get into in a second should highlight that more effectively. So I thought the best way, rather than talking just about the changes in a general sense, was to pick one of the fire services that we've worked with, which is Hampshire Fire. And a couple of years back, they did have the fatalities, 2 fatalities, and one of the incidents that talked about earlier. They had various systems in place. So they were already coming from a point of view of having electronic systems in place and having records of the skills and things that people had, as well as their availability. But the integration, the lack of integration between those systems and the manual processes made them feel that they weren't confident in the information that they had available to them. They had a lot of spreadsheets. So spreadsheets are the things that are the bane of our lives, and we try and remove when we go in. Whenever you have spreadsheets, it's because people have to step outside of the systems that you have in place, and the information becomes, again, inaccurate and not real time, because it's not, as soon as you've detached it from your main systems, then it isn't up to date. Say, really everything was focusing on bringing this information together, so from an operational point of view, they were confident in who they had, where they had them. So they went out looking, one, at their business processes and trying to work out how they wanted to manage their service going forward, but they understood they needed new systems to actually make sure that that became a reality. They needed to be able to model not just, I need 4 people in this place, 5 people for this, but the individual qualifications and link those. So to particular pieces of equipment, to particular appliances, you need different sets of skills. So not just saying I need 4 firefighters and 1 commander or 1 crew manager, I need these people for this appliance, I need these people for these appliances, and actually if I don't have enough between this time period for the big appliance, I want to take them down to the smaller appliance. So building all that in. They also wanted to understand so that the system should know what post people are in, and that's why the HR data is important. The HR data actually tells them who you are, where you are, what role you have. In their case, they actually have people with maybe 3 different roles and contracts and skills. And they needed people, they want the information to be up to date. So they have to give their firefighters the access via mobile phone, via texting, to actually interface with our systems and update to say they are available, they're not available, and what the impact of those changes might be. First graphic, say the resolution's maybe not great for the big screen. Really, this is where we're bringing it all together. So they can now see the appliance they have, and the top line is their actual fleet appliance, whether it's available or not, whether it's defected or not, the number of people they have in the different roles, the skills and qualifications they have, and if they have any gap, this is a minute-by-minute view going across a couple of days. If they have any gaps, it's going to highlight in red. It can also send out proactive warnings. We can move people from one place to another so they can quickly see where their gaps are, move the people from one place to another. Sorry, it went one forward. This is a breakdown then, a larger scale view. So rather than responding to things minute by minute, they can also look out for, let's say, the next 3 months and see, based on training, based on holidays, based on the contract changes I know are going to take place, where are the gaps, where do we have our ambers, where do we have our reds and our shortfalls, and fill them before those problems actually arise. And then the same data is shown on a geographical basis. So I can see my stations, my station availability, where I have particular clusters of problems, and again resolve these things before they happen. So in their case, both the control people, but also the firefighters from home can actually come over the internet using a standard internet browser and see what the status of the service is. And this will auto-refresh and keep changing based on all the things happening in all these departments I talked about. It also lets them see, before they actually make a request to change their availability, or because of an emergency they have to change their availability, what that impact's going to be before they commit that to the system. And this is their kind of individual view, so they can see who's actually on from their station, who's on from their location, and then work out what they want to do, what the issues are going to be. And they can do that all over the internet. One I've mentioned briefly is that, certainly in Hampshire's case, is mobile technology is becoming more and more prevalent. I see everybody has iPhones here, everybody has their own PDAs, so they have to give that information to people on their mobile phones. So on their mobile phone, they can book on and off their availability on a web browser, as well as text. It will actually talk to the systems they have in place when they book off for a time period, and then tell them and warn them the impact they're going to have. They're going to make it short by a qualification. They may take the appliance off the run, and it will warn them before they actually go ahead and do that. And then what we can do is we can also send emails, texts, pager alerts out to managers when that happens and tell them what the information is and what's changed and what they need to do to rectify it. So the key benefits they've achieved, big improvement in the accurate and timely recording of what people are doing, where they are, what skills they have. They have to keep the competency information up to date because it's what they're making real-time decisions on in terms of operational decisions. And they've been able to improve their own health and safety and what they feel are their moral obligations to look after their workforce through the systems that they've put in place and the more accurate information. Again, it doesn't work very well on a screenshot, perhaps, from back of the room. But what they can do is they can analyze that information. So who's been in an incident of this type? Who's touched this particular piece of equipment? Who's used their BA in these conditions? So not just training courses and the theory, who's actually doing these things? Because the big problem in the UK is the call numbers are going down. So keeping people actually refreshed with those skills is a big challenge. So we need to understand that, plan for that, and manage around that. And we can show by these key performance indicators where our problems are and resolve them before they happen. The financial side of things is also a big thing, as we've heard already. And the new systems that they wanted to put in place and how they crew has saved them, they reckon, per annum, 1.5 million sterling by putting in the systems they have and the process changes they've put in place. They've been able to get rid of lots of these offline manual-based forms, manual-based spreadsheets where people are sitting with their own information in their own places on their own desktop, but no one else has access to it. And the departments themselves, by bringing them together with the technology, they also have to actually talk to each other, work together in a much more collaboration way, and getting rid of the duplication that happens across these different areas. The firefighters also like these systems that we put in place because, say, they can now come in at home and see, this is another view that they have to see when they're working, what they're doing. They can request holidays and things which will go through approval workflows before they're approved and entered into the system by managers who can, again, assess the impact. They've been able to change their processes massively. So they used to have to do lots of manual validation checks to check people are getting paid what they should, people are turning up when they should, people have done the skills and the experience they have. So they've been able to change lots of these processes because they have that confidence that the systems are managing them effectively. So very briefly to finish, in terms of who we are the #1 vendor for these enterprise resource management solutions to UK fire services. We also operate in other sectors. We're also a Microsoft Gold partner and ISO certified, so we actually use these same systems as a software company internally to manage our staff, to manage our availability, to actually support our fire service and other customers. And it may or may not mean, I don't know how good everyone's UK geography to you is, but certainly we've got lots of fire services across different geographies within the UK. And more they're actually working with each other. So for example, East and West Sussex, we've talked about sharing information. What we're looking at doing now, they're putting in a joint mobilisation, joint control system. We'll be looking at actually giving them joint information in terms of all their resources, skills from a Firewatch, from our system point of view as well. More information, then my email address is up there if you want to contact me directly. Obviously, there'll be time for questions, I think, and our web addresses. We're actually based across in the exhibition hall as well. Please feel free to come up, get some more information. Hopefully, say that's been of interest, and thanks everyone for your time, and I'll end it there.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.